Hey guys, this is a lecture video for lesson 5.2, where you will do a bank reconciliation, which is, as you learn kind of in the videos, when you compare a bank statement, which would be sort of a compilation of your monthly ins and outs of a checking account for your business, and what you have on your own records. One way I like to think about reconciliation is just the definition of reconciliation is bringing two things back into balance. Think about when you get into a fight with a friend of yours. Maybe you guys are not on speaking terms at all, but then you reconcile, which means you sort of work things out, you bring things back into balance, and you're friends again. So the same kind of idea is here. You have two things: you have a bank statement and you have the business records. And for whatever reason, many reasons as we'll talk about, there are differences between the two sometimes, and you need to make sure you know what those differences are. It's a good chance to pull out errors and to make sure that you're not, proceeding on with gaps in what the numbers should be. So the first thing we'll look at is an actual bank statement. Bank statements look different depending on the bank, but in general, they have some of this key pieces of information. They always have the statement ending date. So in this case, we have January 31st, the actual account owner and their information there, the name of the bank up at top. This might be US Bank, Wells Fargo, TCF, whatever. It would give a summary of any different charges that would be charged against the business, as well as any deposits going in. So if we're thinking about our journal transactions, right, charges are like money coming out. Those would be those cash credits. And then money going in would be cash debits. You always have a statement ending balance, and this is the number that's ultimately we're going to look at. And as we'll see, this number is a little bit different than what our business records show, because during the month of January, the bank charged a $25 service fee. And so since the bank just charges that, it's not something that actually gets presented to the business. And so the business needs to look at that and make sure that they're accounting for those types of things, but they do so only once they get the actual account statement at the end of the month. Just some things to note, that a check which has been paid by the bank is called a canceled check. For whatever reason, you also have outstanding deposits and outstanding checks. And as shown in the videos, these things are, so like outstanding debits would be something like you made a deposit on January 29th, filled out your deposit slip, took pictures of the check, submitted on the app, dropped it off at the bank, whatever. But those amounts haven't cleared yet, quote unquote, cleared yet, meaning the bank hasn't processed them and posted them yet. And so January 30th comes, the statement date ends. The business, Delgado Web Services, has recorded a deposit, but it hasn't shown up in the bank statement yet. So there's going to be a difference between the bank statement and what Delgado Web Services has. Same thing with a check. If a business uses a check, and this is one of the biggest reasons why checks aren't so widely used, think about your own jobs that you might have. Do you guys accept checks at your job? Maybe not. But the reason why checks are not used so much, there's more processing time with them. They're not immediate like a debit card transaction. It's just a written slip of paper. And so there is no reliability on whether funds exist in that account holder's name. They just sort of say that there are. But also there's just more of a processing time with it too. So say Delgado Web Services bought supplies from that Eastside Supplies company, and bought supplies on January 27th. They mail the check. That might take 5 days to get there, 3 to 5 days or whatever to get to Eastside Supplies. Eastside Supplies doesn't deposit checks of their own until, the 15th of each month. So even though Delgado Web Services wrote this check on January 25th, it might not actually show up on the bank until Eastside Supplies deposits that check on the 15th of February or something. So you might have 2 whole weeks go by where it's not actually reflected in the bank statement that amount has been spent, but you know that you wrote the check and it's been recorded in Delgado Web Services journal. And so that's an outstanding check. So what you're going to do today in the working on your own, and I will go through and we'll do this together. You will fill out a bank statement reconciliation. Again, these might look a little bit different depending on what format the business is using, but this is one example, and the principles are the same, is that you record on the left-hand side any balances brought forward, any bank service charges, and then you total there, and then you look at the bank statement and pull off any outstanding deposits or outstanding checks, like for the reasons we talked about there. Add those up, and our ending here should be step 10, compare the balances and make sure that they are equal. So again, as you're working through that Cengage MindTap stuff, just make sure you're having these slides open so that you can just follow step by step. Start with the date, check stub balance, service charge, go all the way around, all the way through step 10. The next part, you are going to actually then record something like a service charge on a check stub so that you have a source document so that you can then turn it over to the accountant of the business, who then will record it as a journal entry. And again, we'll go over this together in just a moment. But then you need to record that miscellaneous expense. And so it depends on what your chart of accounts are. Maybe you have an account for bank service charges specifically. And you would write that as the account title. But in this case, Delgado Web Services uses the account miscellaneous expense and records that $25 actual bank service charge in their own journal once they get that bank statement and see that. So it's this 3-step process to reconcile a bank account. And let's kind of work through it together. So here we are, end of lesson review in Cengage MindTap. We are on the working together portion of it, and we have all this information up here. This is bank statement information, so we don't have an actual picture of the bank statement, but this is some of that key information that came out. This bank statement balance is $27.12. There was a bank service charge of $20. We have an outstanding deposit here, and we have 2 outstanding checks. And then we have the checkbook balance, which would be the Delgado Web Services checkbook balance on their record, saying that that balance is $2,822. So we know right away we need to reconcile this to find out where those differences are, because the checkbook balance does not match the bank statement balance at the end of the month. And we want to make sure that once we account for all these things, they do match. All right, so just following along in that process, first thing we're going to do is type in the date here. And so we will type in August, because our date is August 28th. August 28, or 29, I'm sorry, because that would be the bank statement. Use August 29th of the current year as the date, sorry. So write the date, August 29th, to the check book balance on check stub number 309. So we have check stub number 309 with the balance being 2,000. So I'm just using the checkbook balance on check stub number 309, 2,822 there. 3, we're going to record the service charges here. And so remember, our bank statement showed that there was a bank service charge for this time period. And so we need to record that. So we're just going to write in the language you should use, the service charge in the amount of $20. And then you add the 2 together. So 28, or you subtract it, I'm sorry. So the checkbook balance, because again, Delgado Web Services says that their balance was $28.22, but we know that there was an additional charge during the month that we didn't account for. So we need to subtract that from the total. So $28.22 minus 20 gives us $2,802. Total bank charges. My fault. And then we total it down there. It was not letting me type. So now we have 2,802. So again, this looks a little different than if we go on the slides and we look at this, but this is essentially what we're doing here. We write the service charges over there. We total all the charges, because maybe there was more than just one charge there. And then we calculate the total balance at the bottom. Next step then, step 5, we write the bank statement balance itself, and the bank statement balance was $27.12. And then we have to list any outstanding deposits starting with the date. So outstanding deposit on August 28th. So we're going to use the numbers 0828 in the amount of $300. Total outstanding deposits, well, we only had one. So if we total that, it's just going to be $300. The subtotal then, because we had a deposit that Delgado Web Service, or in this case, I'm sorry, I keep referring to it as the wrong business, Bright and White Laundry, received or made a deposit, but it hadn't cleared the bank yet, quote unquote, cleared the bank yet. So we need to account for that. So we add $27.12 plus $300 gives us $3,012. Now we account for our outstanding checks. And if we look back up here, we have two outstanding checks, number 306 and 308 for $140.70. So we will start with check number 306 in the amount of $140. And then we have check number 308 in the amount of $70. Add those two amounts up. Total outstanding checks equals $210. And then the adjusted balance, we take 3,012 minus that 210 because this is our amount. So our deposits increase the bank balance, and then now our outstanding checks are going to decrease it. So 3,012 minus 210 gives us $2,802. Last step is just compare the balances. Step 10. Do they match? Yes, they do. So we are good on the reconciliation. It just means that once we accounted for the bank service charge and the outstanding deposits and checks, our amounts do indeed match. So we don't have to take any further action. We're good. The next step here is to record the service charge on check stub number 309. And so all you're going to do is you're going to start with that balance brought forward, which would be the balance on the check stub, balance brought forward of 2822. Subtotal here, because we didn't have any deposits at all, but our subtotal then going down would be 2822. We did have, and this is just kind of like that memo, we're accounting for that service charge so that we have a source document so that we can go down and make a journal entry for that service charge because it was an expense that the business incurred that they haven't recorded yet. So we're going to write service charge $20. And that's fine. Subtotal it over here, which is $20. And then, I'm sorry, the $20 should go there because this is the actual subtotal then. After you subtract out that expense from the checkbook, we should get back to this number, 2802. So 2822 minus 20 is 2802. And that's it for the check stub. Now we are ready to make our journal entry. And so we are recording this on the date of August 29. That account title was miscellaneous expense. We're going to use memo number 77 as our document number. So we're going to write M77. Memo number 77 is the source document number. We'll do our debits first. So miscellaneous expense. So if we're looking at this transaction, it was an expense. And so we are going to need to debit the expense account in the amount of $20. And then since it's coming out of cash, it's coming out of, remember, cash means more than just physical cash. It can be an electronic funds transfer, which is basically what happened here. but it still is going to decrease our checking account, our cash account. So we need to credit there. And we are good.